Hi, it's KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and my guests today are from the upcoming production of StepAfrika at Hancher, the University of Iowa. Our friend Rob Klein is back. It's been a while since we've had you live in studio, Rob. Nice to see you.
I've been sending other people, haven't I? That's no good.
Yeah. And the founder of StepAfrika, C. Brian Williams. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. Nice to be. I haven't done an interview so long. I'm like, what do I say? Thank you.
That's a good start.
All right.
So StepAfrika comes to Hancher for a new program, coming up on Saturday, September 11th, and we'll talk specifics in just a minute. But this is your creation of StepAfrika, Brian. Mm-hmm. It combines, dance and history and rhythm and storytelling. It's really the whole package about how to tell the story of Africans in America.
Yeah.
But I want to work backwards.
Okay.
And start with, because the foundation of StepAfrika is stepping.
Yes.
And that's it's a dance style, I guess we could call it, that is pretty unique to historically black universities and colleges.
Yeah.
And you discovered that when you went to college.
Exactly. At Howard University in Washington, D.C., about something years ago, is when I first walked onto campus, and I learned this art form, stepping, which was created by African-American fraternities and sororities. And it's such a unique form. And stepping, really, the body becomes an instrument, right? We use our hands, our feet, and our voices to make music, and really complex music when you think about it. And so I was fascinated by the art form, and that led me, when I finished my studies at Howard, I immediately went to South Africa. And I was living and working there and came across traditional African dance forms and music that reminded me a lot of what I had learned and developed here in the United States. And that led me to create StepAfrika. So it was taking stepping, an African-American dance form, and connecting it with the African continent. In this case, Southern Africa.
I've watched a few of the videos to familiarize myself with the history and what you do a little bit, and it was astonishing because you have shot a little bit of video of South African men doing a dance that is exactly like stepping. And
it
here
is.
It was, and this is not a thing that came over hundreds of years ago. It's very contemporary, and yet complete parallel evolution.
No, amazing parallels. I mean, you're talking about the South African Gumboot Dance, and I had the same experience when you saw it, as you saw it on film. I actually saw a little boy in Southern Africa doing that art form, the Gumboot Dance. And in the Gumboot Dance, you use your hands, and they're wearing these rubber boots. They call them wellies, to protect their feet while working in the mines of South Africa. And during their breaks, they would start to create all these crazy polyrhythmic songs just with their hands, their voices, and their boots. And when I saw that dance, I was shocked because here it is an art form deep in the continent of Africa that closely resembles a form that was created by men and women on college campuses in the United States. And so StepAfrika was really designed to connect those art forms together and, as a result, connect the people. And since then, StepAfrika has really been interested in using the arts as a way to bring different cultures and people together. And I think our show, Drumfolk, this Saturday at Hancher, is just a part and parcel to that whole, our mission, if you will.
So what you've done with Drumfolk in particular is taken this modern African-American art form and used it to tell stories of the slave era.
Exactly. Well, what was interesting for us is what Drumfolk does. StepAfrika was looking at connecting the art form with different forms around the world. So we've been in all over Eastern Europe and Asia and Central South America and of course Africa. But we wanted to start looking a little more intensely at the American story. And Drumfolk invited us to look at the Stoner Rebellion of 1739, and that time in history when Africans were enslaved and their experiences in the country, and what happened why African Americans began to use the body as a drum, and why the drum was absent in any of our traditional forms. So, I mean, for your listeners, I'm sure your listeners know a lot about, of course, jazz music, and tap. You know, when did African Americans begin to start to use their body as just an instrument, like in tap, in stepping, in ham bone, and in this dance form called the ring shout, which is one of the oldest African American traditions that we'll perform in this show on Saturday. So if you've never seen the ring shout, I would invite you to come see this performance, because there's one section of the show where we actually bring this 200, 300-year-old tradition back to life. And for me, Drumfolk is an honor to pay homage to those Africans who came to the country like in the 1700s and began to do their traditions and reshape and redefine culture.
In a real general way, when we start to study jazz, and when I talk with very young kids about jazz, I say, the rhythms that we have in jazz today began in Africa hundreds of years ago, and were brought here, when people were taken to America. But then I kind of gloss over the next part, which is when those drums were taken away.
Exactly. And and that's so fascinating. If you look at African American culture, it's truly a derivative. It's an expansion, let's say, of African culture. But let's just talk about this 17 Seminole Rebellion. So the rebellion in 1739, you can Google this. Everybody should Google this before you come see the show. It's fascinating. Africans used the drum. They said they were from Angola to start a revolt against the institution of slavery. And they used the drum as a way to gather people. This is 1739, South Carolina, right? So it's not even the United States yet. It's a colony. It's a British colony. And so they start the revolt, and it's successful in that they're battling with the colonists, and it's going back and forth. But eventually it is, quashed completely. And colonists were very concerned, because now they were bringing Africans to the country in slavery, and they were worried that this might continue. So the colonists of South Carolina wrote an act that became the Negro Act of 1740. You can Google this as well. This act was a letter written to His Majesty, King of England. So of course this is before the Boston Tea Party and all that stuff. They're writing a letter. The American colonists are writing a letter saying, "Hey, to the King of England, we need to enact these laws, because the African population is starting to get out of control. We need to take some things away." And one of the things they took away was the drum. The drum was considered a tool of insurrection now. And so they eliminated that from the American plantation in the South. And what we see from that moment is Africans had to start. That's when we started to become African Americans. I think for me, that's when, as an African American, that's when the culture was like, okay, we're no longer whatever the states were back then, Nigeria, Angola, South Africa, whatever, we now have to reshape and recreate a culture here in this United States of America. It's so fascinating. It's a lot of times, and for us, I kind of had skipped over this history too. It's stepping, and I went all the way back to Africa, but there's 400 years in between there where the people shaped and responded that this show, Drumfolk, really draws inspiration from. So I can't wait for people to see it. I'm so glad to be back at Hancher. It's such a beautiful theater. I was in the theater this morning, and I can't wait to gather safely again in that space.
And this is the first time that you'll be performing since the pandemic, yes?
Exactly.
So just on a lighter note, what was it like getting back into shape for the company after so many months off?
It's a challenge. Performing is like, for anyone doing their craft, working, it's a craft that you work every day to nurture and sustain. So we were able to keep our artists employed throughout this pandemic, which kept us in some type of shape. But, there's doing a rehearsal shape, and then there's show shape. So for the last month, the artists have been just trying to get back in their bodies. There's been a lot of sore bodies, a lot of physical therapy on the floor, a lot of rolling on foam rollers and whatnot to keep everybody together. But I know most importantly, they're excited. This is what artists are built to do. And Hancher, this is the first performance.
It is.
At Hancher.
First performance back on the stage, that's right.
Yeah. So it's like, let's get back to it.
Drumfolk with StepAfrika comes to Hancher on September 11th. And tickets still available, Rob?
Tickets are still available. You can get them by calling our trusty number, 800-HANCHER, or at 335-1160. Now, we have made a change to our box office hours for this year, so they are open in the box office from 11 to 3 each weekday. But, of course, tickets are available 24 hours a day on our website, hancher.uiowa.edu.
So, Brian, I know it's kind of like picking your favorite child, but as you think about this this show, commissioned by Hancher, yes?
Yep, absolutely.
What's a favorite moment?
In this show?
Yeah.
So there's several. First, it's preserving this art form called the ring shout, which is from the Gullah Sea Islands in South Carolina off Georgia. Because before this, I had never seen this performance on stage, right? So I love bringing that art form 200, 300 years old right back to the theater and back to the people to see, witness, and learn. The second one is that we actually traveled to Angola doing the research for this production. And we actually engaged an Angolan choreographer to create some of the work, the dance that you will see in this first half. And the drumming in that section is so transformative to me. It's almost hypnotic. The drummers we also have dancers on stage, but we have drummers as well. And that moment in the theater when those drums are playing and the way it fills and transforms the space is something that I've missed. And I'm making the artists rehearse increasingly every day to get that sound right because it's beautiful. And I've never really heard those. I've heard them, of course, in the rehearsal studio, but not in the American theater that often. So it's a unique way to experience the work. So those are my two. I know you asked for one, but I had to give you two.
Always give more than you're asked.
You know?
There you go.
Well, this is, I've really enjoyed getting to learn a little bit about stepping in StepAfrika and, of course, getting to hear you tell the story yourself about how it all came together. But this is, it's full of energy, full of life, full of love, and anyone who loves music, anybody who loves dance will come
Guaranteed.
Come away with some special memories. So, Rob, congratulations on
Thank you.
getting Hancher back.
Yes, and we're so excited. I should say, people know I'm Hancher's marketing director. It's my job to love all the shows, but we love StepAfrika in an extremely special way. They were part of our opening season in the new facility. They held off of stage for like 45 minutes after the smoke alarms went off unexpectedly. We commissioned a short video from them, an amazing video about the Stono Rebellion during the pandemic. They are near and dear to our hearts, and so we're thrilled to be reopening the Hadley stage at Hancher Auditorium with StepAfrika. I would strongly encourage everyone to bring their mask because we want to keep everyone safe at Hancher Auditorium, but definitely join us this Saturday night.
It's time to welcome Hancher Auditorium back to live performance, and couldn't do it better than doing it with StepAfrika. Brian, thanks so much for being here today. Great to meet you.
Thanks, man.
And I wish you a successful show. And Rob, always good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for being here. Again, the website, if people want information, is
hancher.uiowa.edu. Now, back in the day, I used to say just Google us. Don't do that anymore because scalpers will try to sell you tickets at a ridiculous price. hancher.uiowa.edu.
Rob Klein and C. Brian Williams from Hancher. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio many weekdays at 10:20 or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture or however you get your podcasts. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.